Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. Today I am doing something a little bit different and uploading a director's commentary for David Fincher's film, Gone Girl, one of my favorite movies of all time, by one of the best directors of all time. This will contain spoilers for the movie, so if you have not seen Gone Girl, please watch it first, and then you can enjoy the commentary after. You'll get a lot more out of it. David Fincher's commentaries are like miniature film courses. There's so much info packed in here. It's just so helpful and so fun to listen to. He's got so many fun stories. If you like this kind of video, please give this video a like. It will let me know that you want more of this type of content.
This shot was problematic because we had these long wigs for Amy as she's meant to be adored. And they were just, like, I think almost every single shot of her in this movie has been retouched along the wig line in order to fix it. Wig technology has not really changed since Shakespeare, and no new procedures or techniques were designed or founded on this film to make them any better than they've ever been. Thank God for digital retouching. We shot the movie in a small town south of St. Louis by about 2 hours. Location scouts went out for about 3 weeks to find a small town that could double for North Carthage, Missouri, which is a fabricated town that Gillian created in her head. And we had people combing, from the actual town of Carthage, Missouri, through Springfield and up along the Mississippi into St. Louis. And one day I got these pictures of Cape Girardeau. And I sent them immediately to Gillian and said, I think we found the town. I think we've found North Carthage. And I think it's going to be this town called Cape Girardeau. And she said, oh, God, Cape Girardeau's perfect. That's kind of what I had in my head when I was writing it. And I was like, you don't have to keep this a fucking secret. If you have ideas about where these things should take place, if you want to hip us to what you had in your head when you were actually writing it, by all means, feel free to. So Carrie Coon was in trying to kind of build a relationship between two people who were supposed to have at one point shared a womb. You really want to find the actor who's going to play Margot has to really be able to sort of think and verbalize and finish sentences at the same speed that Ben Affleck does. And that wasn't the easiest thing in the world. And we were incredibly fortunate when Carrie Coon dropped out of the sky into our laps. I saw an audition that she had done with her brother on an iPad and sent, and I think it was like 15 or 18 pages of material that she had and she read. And it was kind of like, wow, who is this? So I sent it to Ben, and he looked at it and said, she doesn't look anything like me. She's perfect.
It's great.
I hadn't originally thought of Ben for this role because I actually knew that he was crewing up for his Dennis Lehane film that he was making at Warner Brothers, and we were talking to a lot of the same crew members, and so as they were hiring, we were hiring, and then suddenly someone told me, well, he might be amenable to being in Gone Girl if you move quickly enough. So I met with him, I think it was like on a Thursday night, and by the weekend we were trying to figure out a way to push back his life and move it out of the way of my new priorities.
Might attract some desperate characters.
I really liked the dialogue in this scene. I really liked this notion of this studied effervescence or studied witticisms, and the notion of this idealized pickup. When I read the script, I thought it was very funny in that it was self-conscious, and yet it's two people sort of testing each other. And what you don't take into account, obviously, when you read a script like this for the first time, is how many impressions the marketing is going to have to make on the audience in order to deliver them into the cinema to watch these two characters meet. And the weirdest phenomenon is that we have the issue of the unreliable narrator. We have the issue of this is Amy's memory, supposedly, of this moment, or her fictionalized memory of this moment, and that has to be stylized from that subjective standpoint. But on top of it, we needed to, in the marketing, let people know what the stakes were. And so we had this shot designed always of Amy underwater, her body being dropped and floating down to the bottom of the Mississippi. And you don't realize how that's going to affect the audience's embracing of a meet cute. And when we first started screening the movie, nobody in the audience had ever seen any of the marketing materials. And so they really enjoyed the first meeting. And then by the time we got to the second screening of the movie, the teaser and the trailer had been out. And so now all of a sudden the audience was very resistant to the idea of liking either of these characters because they thought, well, the blonde chick might die. I don't know that I want to like her, and I certainly don't want to like her husband. So it's a tricky sort of postmodern hurdle to jump. You have to market a movie in a way that's going to bring people into the theaters. Sometimes you have to promise them things that are beyond the opening scenes of the narrative, and when you do that, you kind of fuck up. Their minds aren't blank slates when they come into the theater. This is the only time I've ever shot on the back lot at Universal, and it was only because it ended up being much less of a nightmare than trying to shoot in Brooklyn. I love the idea of romance amongst garbage. This reminds me of the Sid and Nancy poster. They're kissing and the garbage cans and paper towels and stuff's being strewn and flying through the air behind them. There was a lot of talk about likability, which you can imagine is something that is of preeminent importance to me. But there was a big conversation about whether or not Ben's character, Nick, would be likable enough. And I remember when we were working out their first sex scene was when he takes Amy back to his apartment. And it was originally supposed to be this unbelievable missionary position sex that resulted in cooperative orgasms. And we started kind of rehearsing that, and it just sort of took forever. And I thought maybe if we tracked from the window so we could hear a garbage truck moving around or something, and then we saw him on top of her, and maybe he's performing oral sex on her. And I broached this, and Rosman said, "Oh, I think Amy would like that very much." And Ben was like, "Okay, I'm game." And I sent the dailies to Gillian Flynn and said, "So what do you think?" Because we'd never discussed it. And she wrote me back saying, "I don't think he has any more likability issues, at least as it relates to women."
Ugh, that's symbolic. What's the gift for 5?
Wood.
So what'd you get her?
This is something that Ben is extraordinarily good at. When he has to cook up a phone conversation, when he has to hear somebody on the other end of a phone, it's kind of stunning how, if I was his wife, I think I would be very suspicious always of whoever just called, because he has a real gift at being able to insinuate a conversation. So it's one thing to find a town that you can say this is the non-existent North Carthage, but then to find the house and the neighborhoods within that town. We had to find the Dunn house, and we found this house on a beautiful tree-lined neighborhood that had one road in and had this great vantage looking down the street, so you could see all the cars as they came up the hill and pulled into the driveway. And we found this beautiful house, and we talked to the family, and we encouraged them and cajoled them and did everything we could to get them to say yes to use the exterior of their house, and kind of realized about halfway through the negotiations to shoot the exteriors of this house that the interior of the house that we designed was a lot larger. And by that I mean probably 6 feet in every direction. The footprint of the house was a couple thousand square feet bigger all in once you took in this increase in the footprint. And it was one of those moments where you have to kind of ask yourself, is this important that the interior reflect exactly what the exterior reflects? And Don Burt, the production designer, we started talking about this, like where were we going to cut, what we were going to cut back on in order to make the interior of the house conform to the actual footprint of the real house. And we kind of got the idea that maybe ultimately it didn't matter, that what we were talking about was a relationship that had, two people who had become estranged, and that maybe it was a good thing to have a lot of real estate so that you really look at it and you become very aware of the fact that these are two people who don't have any kids. He has his own office, she has her own office. They have a room for the cat box. There's a lot of space here that's sort of vacant, and there's vacancies in their lives. And so it was an interesting look into how rigorous and accurate one has to be in telling a story, because I don't think we probably could have fit half the rooms in the actual downstairs in the real house that we used for the exterior. So Kim Dickens is an actor that I had seen a million times and kind of never put it together. It was the same person. I'd seen her in Deadwood, I'd seen her in Treme, I'd seen her in I guess it was Hollow Man, and she has a very interesting energy, but she also is really chameleon-like in terms of what you get from her. And her audition just wowed us all. We were kind of like, she's perfect. Patrick Fugit was somebody that I'd heard about from Cameron Crowe, and I had seen him obviously in Almost Famous, and I had seen him in a couple of other things since then. But when he came in, I was like, we did not want our local cops to be rubes. We wanted them to be legitimate. We're not making fun of law enforcement or jurisprudence. We wanted it to be, we're definitely going to be taking the piss out of the media soon, or certainly out of, ambulance chasing tragedy vampires. But I wanted to make sure that our police force there was no Barney Fifes.
Your wife is amazing, Amy?
Yeah, she is.
So the device of the diaries, the subjectivity of Amy Dunn's view of her marriage. She has to speak to you possibly from beyond the grave. She has to whisper in your ear and tell you what was going on in her marriage. And I was daunted when I read the book that a satisfactory device could be found that would be cinematic. Then I opened the first draft of the script and I started reading, and this idea of seeing these like manicured hands and, beautiful handwriting as she lets you in on her deepest, most intimate thoughts. It was so straightforward, and the way that she connected the time frames as where we are in their marriage and where we are in her disappointment. The fact that it was kind of signposted by these different pens that we see in her hand, I thought it was such a beautiful, simple, fun idea. And then that we see them later being tossed out the window of the car, and that they sort of mark the evolution of her vitriol.
Trust fund, I know, I can't complain.
Your parents literally plagiarized your childhood.
No, they improved upon it. Then
So there's a process that happens after you've kind of said, all right, this is the movie that we're going to make, where you try to codify what you need from each of the performers that's going to play the characters. And I remember in conversations that we were having about who would play Amy, Rosamund Pike's name came up. And, I always thought she was stunning. I always thought she was a really interesting presence. But when I started to, you kind of go through your checklist of, well, what do I need to avoid here? What are the pitfalls that either her other roles that she's been in, or performance tics or habits that she has, what works against me? Because I kind of had this idea that I really wanted Carolyn Bessette. That was kind of my vision of Amy, or the person that kind of kept lodging in my thinking. So when Rosamund's name came up, obviously she was statuesque, she was stunning to look at. Had all of that sort of the arm piece, the prize. She had all of those things already physically. And I'd seen 3 or 4 movies that she'd been in over the course of probably 6 or 8 years. And I kept sort of like hitting my head against the wall, trying to figure out what was my impression of her from those movies. And I realized I didn't have one. I had an idea of what she looked like, and I had an idea of how that could be interpreted, how her physical presence could be interpreted, but I didn't really have a sense of who she was as a human or a sense of who she was as an actor. And that's a weird thing, when you spend your whole life watching actors on TV, which is basically what directors do. You learn to form very quick opinions, and I had none. And I started to think that maybe that was kind of a great and important aspect of Amy, that Amy had to be so many different things to so many different people, that in a weird way, the impression that she makes should be sort of unfathomable. And then I met with her and told her how horrendous and difficult and uncomfortable this movie would be. And she didn't seem dissuaded. And in the course of I think we had like a 5 or 6 hour dinner. In the course of this dinner, I asked her about how she grew up, and I wanted to know about her siblings. And she told me she was an only child. And it suddenly occurred to me that was the thing that whoever played Amy had to have, is that sort of socialization amongst adults. It's just a different kind of, people just behave differently. And so it was kind of the aha moment. And then, then the question is, okay, are you willing to gain and lose 12 to 15 pounds every month for 4 months? Are you willing to be naked and covered in blood for weeks at a time? And, are you willing to do all of the really heinous things that this character is going to ask of you? And she was all for it.
She's a voracious reader, so she's always got a book in her hand.
Well, days can get long. I mean, I know a few housewives that evening glass of wine starts coming at noon, or prescription pills.
Just last week, we had a soccer mom. Nice lady.
We shot the North Carthage Police Department at a building in Culver City where we'd shot a lot of Zodiac, and it was it's just a great mid-century building that has a courthouse in it and a jail. We didn't get to use the jail. We used the jail in Cape Girardeau, but it's one of those things where it's like you come back and you go, oh my God, we're in this police department again for another 10 days.
We'll look into that.
So you got to the bar around 11 today. Where were you before that, just to cross that off?
Well, I was home. I left at 9:30. Got a cup of coffee, newspaper. I went to Sawyer Beach and read the news.
Did you visit with him?
There's a moment in here that I really love. It's such a lovely, little thing that happens in the middle of Boney's gear changes. She puts A and B together and then asks the question about blood type. His confusion, or his momentary sort of pit stop as he weighs what is the relative importance of this.
Type A. Well, that can make you crazy if you're not like that. You seem pretty laid back. Type B. Speaking of which, Amy's blood type.
And that's just one of those things that, actors give you. It's mortar that holds these ideas together and makes and binds the characters.
Maybe it's type O.
Where are her folks? New York?
Yeah.
Can they get here in time for this press conference tomorrow?
Wow, I have no idea. I haven't talked to them.
You haven't called your wife's parents
I mean, you
yet?
can't get a signal in this building. I've been in here talking to you.
Well, call them, please, Nick, now.
Should I know my wife's blood type? I apologize. I didn't know what was going on. Now I'm under the station.
There's a moment at the beginning of the shot as Boney comes forward where you can see Patrick Fugit just existing through the glass walls, through the aluminum sash windows in the background, and he's in character and he's being thoughtful but he's completely alone in the scene. And I love those things where you just get a little tiny single-digit percentage point of a characterization just on the edge of frame as you move on to this other idea. And Leonard, who plays Ben's father, came up with this idea that he really wanted to be scratching his arm all the time, and I was okay. And that's another thing, you just see little behavioral moments in the wide shots just past other important bits of dialogue that are going on. But I like these little moments where an actor sort of invests in in this notion and then does their little thing, even though that's not what the scene's about. It's just happening tangentially. The tangential is always, it's so much more important to behavior almost than the intentional. This was something Leonard came up with. He just, on one take, it says in the script, it's the fastest drop off ever. And he really does not like being around his father. And Leonard just chimed in with this, get your fucking hands off me. And as soon as we cut, everybody cracked up. And I was like, that one's in the movie.
Get your fucking hands off. Thanks.
The use of Blue Oyster Cult's Don't Fear the Reaper was not, it's not meaningful. I was riding in a production van from base camp to one of the places we were shooting, and I was just amazed at how much classic rock is played in Missouri.
Told us marriage is hard work and compromise and more work. Abandon all hope, ye who enter.
Amy's hope is to wait. You're here.
I think one of the things that becomes apparent about Gillian through her writing is that bourbon and sex are very, very big topics with her. I love the idea of watching somebody's marriage sort of fall apart in what they do every year for their anniversary. And I thought that the gimmick of the treasure hunt as this thing that they always do, and how it grows from being something that he likes to be a part of to something he's dreading even knowing about.
Might be willing to bend the rules this once.
God bless Jane Austen.
Jeff Cronenweth, the director of photography, came into this location we shot in Chinatown in downtown LA, and this was a mahjong parlor or something. I think it had been a restaurant at one point, so we sort of restored it back to a restaurant, and there were these beautiful fluorescent fixtures from the 1940s that were over this eating area, and Jeff decided that he wanted to diffuse the light on the side, so he taped up newspapers to the side so that you had light from the fluorescent through this newsprint and color advertising and comics pages, and it was really beautiful. It was a great trick.
You're so cute. I want to punch us in the face.
So this is one of those things that's tricky, is you have this underlying story that Nick Dunn is trying to be in communication with his girlfriend, his mistress. And so we had these areas where we had to kind of like plant the seeds that would later hopefully make people go, oh, that's what he was up to. But he had to do these things in the foreground where he takes out his phone and he looks at it and he puts it away so his sister doesn't see it. There are people who do that and it's too pointed. But Ben is very, very subtle. And there's a kind of indirectness to the way that he can do those things. Probably because he's so duplicitous.
Like to be around Amy doesn't mean I don't care about her. Anyway, whoever took her is bound to bring her back.
This scene marks the introduction of the very fabulous and fabulously talented Casey Wilson, who gave us her time and her writing abilities, because a lot of what the character of Noelle has to do exists in these silent flashbacks where we see this relationship that's cultivated between Amy and Noelle. And a lot of times we would just bring Casey in and we would say, okay, you guys are having Chardonnay-fueled girl time in the afternoon, and you're discussing Amy's sex life. And then we would roll, and they would just go on these 4 and 5 minute tears where they would talk and talk and talk. And it was incredibly sort of Oprah-like. It was extremely heartfelt, and Casey Wilson is one of the funniest people that you can ever watch. I mean, we would be in stitches, and we'd have the sound completely turned down. I didn't even know what was being said in the next room because I was just looking at her face, and the stuff that they would get into, and how it would make Rosamund cry, and how Casey would react to that, and when she would reach to get her a tissue or reach to refill her wine glass. It's a kind of supreme physical comedy that is it's a rare thing. This notion that Gillian had that we meet this guy the day after his wife has gone missing. He stayed at his sister's house and he drank all night And I love the idea that she says to him, no, 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 you want to look like that. It's the first time that anybody is discussing the appearances of the distraught husband, especially because it comes on the heels of a scene where she says to him, whoever took her is bound to bring her back. And now we see them comfortably sort of hunkered down in her house. And she's telling him, no, 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 it's okay if you have a bad head and you look like shit. You should. The day after your wife goes missing, that's what it should look like. It's those kinds of insights into what this situation must be like that I think sets Gillian apart. So one of the things that really good actors do for you is that they save you from embarrassing moments of unclarity. We had shot this scene, and at the end of it, Kim Dickens kind of looked at me sort of making a face, and I said, what's wrong? And she said, I don't think my character has ever met Margot. Well, how would my character know who she is? And we were like, quick, we need one more setup. Where Carrie walks in, stands next to you and says, I'm Margot the twin. It was one of those things where you just go, how could we have missed that? But thank God somebody didn't. This is a weird scene because you need Nick Dunn to both be human and realistic in his not knowing how to navigate this very odd change in his circumstances. I mean, asking somebody to come and stand before the press and ask for help in the finding of his missing wife is such an awkward thing. And I think he plays it so well. At the same time, he has to be making the audience wonder, wow, he seems a little disassociative. And it's a tricky balance because there's a certain rote nature to people who are in a situation that they've seen on television. They kind of have an understanding of what they're supposed to do. And then asking somebody, okay, you need to evoke that. Lisa Baines, who plays Mary Beth Elliott, in the middle of this, she launches into this CV list of accomplishments that her daughter has achieved. And it's a very telling look into this woman's relationship with her daughter. And Lisa's very, very good at this, and there's a certain theatricality that she has to have in order to see why Amy has the issues that she has with her parents. And Lisa was able to project that to the third balcony. And it's a wonderful interchange between seeing how Nick takes in his mother and father-in-law and the distance that he wants from them. And then also, as Mary Beth goes into her sort of listing Amy's accomplishments, you can see that he and Go don't really take Amy's journalistic accomplishments that seriously. And it's a great way to show just how confusing and human and complicated the relationship between all these people is.
Definitely.
We found this photograph of Neil from probably the Golden Globes. He was with an actress who shall remain unnamed because we lopped her head off, and found this other flashlit photograph of Rosamund from the same period and composited them together. But I love the idea of introducing the stalker ex-boyfriend in this prom picture. And they seem so happy and so, they're so skinny and happy and youthful and clueless.
Battery, what?
I only know it was bad.
I didn't know this.
Okay, thank you.
There's a little moment at the end of this. We're tracking out of one room into the next, and Kim stops Ben with a little, can I have you for a moment? And I love Carrie in the background. Probably shot like 14 takes. And I finally said, just lean out. Like, you're waiting for him and you're going to be there as long as he's in talking with Boney. But you are kind of questioning, like, when is this all going to be over with? And she has such a great energy about that. It seems so appropriate. It's not a codependent thing. It's just like what's going on now?
And you can tell me what this means.
There are a lot of double entendres. I don't know if they were intentional, but I love the notion of a clue that begins, although the spot couldn't be any tighter. So I said to Patrick, like, just laugh a little bit. Like, is this some weird kind of sexual thing? And I love the thing that he and Kim have together where she's just, oh, come on, grow the fuck up. One of the reasons that I was drawn to Kim Dickens was not only is she incredibly capable as an actor, but she has this gravitas to her thinking. You can actually see her taking in everything around her. And I didn't want Boney to be a caricature. I wanted her to be Sherlock Holmes. I wanted her to be really good. at what she does. What I love about Kim is that you can give her these little things to do, and she does them so precisely and economically. Just the movement that she shows you, the way she takes in his row of books, the way her finger goes and touches his lack of book ideas. And she seems both sort of calm and formidable. And I thought that was a really good combination to balance Nick's kind of expertise in duplicity and his casualness about, well, I don't see what the big deal is. And all we've got to do is find her. And right, that's all. And something else is going on here. You see him when he's a little panicked in some ways, but you also see that he's pretty good at covering that stuff up. And I thought that it would be great to combat what his energy was with somebody who is very, very still and practiced and elegant in the way that they move. One of the first conversations that I had with Kim Dickens was about leaning. As an actor, she, wants to show you that she's into what she's doing and she's an energetic actor. And I kept saying to her, you can't do that with this. You can't lean forward. You can't be off your balance. You have to be standing straight up and down. You have to pivot and take everything in. I want you to be sort of the calm eye of the storm. And it was interesting to watch her take that on for Boney, that she got comfortable with the idea of just waiting for the other actor to finish and taking them in and scrutinizing them and then delivering her line. This is a moment that could be right out of the game. It's like alarm on top of technology that doesn't work and the awkwardness of that. And this is not easy stuff to do. And, we don't actually have an alarm blaring in his ears. And he does have to raise his voice and he does have to talk over somebody else's on the phone. And he can organize all of those things. It's very deft. It's not easy to do. So this was a tricky thing. We had to have a blue house that could be misconstrued for a brown house. And one of the ways that I thought about we would do that was by putting yellow or sodium light on a light blue house, and that would sort of make it sort of brownish. Then, of course, we got there and we were like, well, then she's right. It is a brown house. And then she turns on her flashlight and it makes it blue. But the flashlight itself was so blue that I started to wonder whether the audience was going to say, well, wait a minute, but that flashlight's at 5,600 Kelvin. So perhaps it is a brown house. So there are definitely moments on the shoot where you can overthink shit into oblivion. I love the beginnings of the curdling of this marriage, and it comes off the first time he says anything truly disparaging about his wife when he slams the steering wheel, calls her a bitch. And it should be that it begins to make the audience go, well, wait a minute. Why is he angry with her? She's missing. And I really appreciate it as a story device. This is an extension of the meet cute. This is a diary entry that's talking about the idealized notion of what soulmates are supposed to behave like to one another, and that they have this moment where they disagree about how something's handled and yet find their way through it. And you see that dramatized in their relationship. And it's a very, very important notion. It's an important idea to see behaviorally represented, and it's very nicely drawn. I love the idea of her coming to him, in the 5 o'clock in the morning, just before the sun's risen, and they have, slept on the day bed for whatever reason, and they have this very, very quiet, intimate conversation about things that are worrying her and things that she thinks he needs to start taking seriously. And when he rises up, when he sits up and he says, wait a minute, that's like all of it. That's like all of our money. That's our nest egg. And then they realize it's really about the two of them. The reliable narrator aspect of this is irrelevant. What's really nice about it as screenwriting is that it is one of those moments that sort of wins you over to the idea of they're on the same page. They're dedicated to the same ideas. And it's very minimalist and deftly drawn. The fact that it's bookended with this next scene where he's playing Call of Duty and is surrounded by Chinese takeout food and light beer cans is it's one of the things that I love about Gillian is that she didn't feel it necessary to have much time between all the rest of it is background noise and you haven't gotten off your ass in 3 days. What am I doing? what is this relationship about? And then, of course, the tag on the end of it is,
Well, that's the basic tenet.
the real world steps in to complicate
Easy
things.
to throw.
Nick, I don't get it. I don't get why you're daring me to be someone I don't want to be. The nagging shrew, the controlling bitch. I'm not that person. I'm your wife.
Sorry.
I love the notion of somebody going missing and needing a search party and having a appeal for public help. I love the fact that it became this sort of something to do on this summer day in this small town. The kids sort of running to get to the common room to hear where they're supposed to go and walk single file and tramp through the underbrush and look for remains. Couldn't help but remind me a little bit of Jaws. David Clennon is an actor that I have always appreciated. I love The Thing, but more important, I think, in my most formative years working as a projectionist at a theater on Main Street in Ashland, Oregon, I saw Being There probably 175 times. And David Clennon is so funny when he is playing slightly confused and earnest. And I was trying to sort of formulate who Rand and Mary Beth were, and I kind of pictured a lot of the couples that my parents knew in the mid 70s in Marin County, California. And there was a famous movie or a famous series of articles that became a movie called The Serial. And David Clennon is very much like all of those people that, were professors or psychologists or magazine writers, mental health professionals. And he reminded me so much of that kind of energy of those people. So the idea of David and Lisa was, it was low-hanging fruit. There's a character introduction here where, we've seen the picture of Neil Patrick Harris, and then we see him for the first time as this kind of guy with expensive sunglasses, and how tangential all of this is at this moment in time, because really what's front and center about everyone's questioning of Nick Dunn is he behaving appropriately, and is he... And then Gillian does this nice thing where we've seen this person who's not like all the other people at this gathering, and Ben goes after him you don't know what he's going to do, but respect the fact that the character is curious. And then he goes out and he runs into Shauna Kelly. And this was, this is such a beautiful 21st century exploration of the tragedy vampire. The Nick Dunn has in some odd way become kind of a celebrity, and she wants to get a selfie with him. As an audience member, you're watching this going, it seems sort of innocuous, but the moment that the picture is taken and she has it in her hand, you kind of realize along with him at the same speed, this can't be good. This can't lead to anything but heartbreak. It's so weird with technology being what it is, because we actually just did one take where we pulled all the gear out of the hallway and had them actually go through the thing with the phone recording a movie, and had them go through the whole scene. And then we took the footage that was on the phone and matted it into the phone in appropriate areas, and then froze it for Ben's smile. Everyone's in the other room, and then finally you go, okay, cut. And I run outside and I pick up this Samsung phone and I scroll through and I hit play, and then there's this moment where they freeze and he does that smile, and you just go, okay, we got it. I think it was like take two. That is the most inappropriate smile for this moment in the narrative. It's perfect. And again, beyond, something taking place on July 4th, beyond the idea of a search party looking for remains, whenever you have 80 feet of dolly track and a walk and talk on the sand, it has to harken to Jaws. When we cast Lisa Baines, it was really for this one line. It was when she came in to read and she said, "My God, this place smells like feces."
God, this place literally smells like feces.
It was so perfect. It was just like, this is exactly what this woman would sound like. So I looked no further. I was like, we got this.
And your searches.
There's a lot of cop nonsense, where they're catching up to what's going on in the household, or they're beginning to turn rocks over. But what I love about this scene coming up is that the police are actually hiding from the neighbors because it seems very like a small town. It seems very much like the kind of thing that would happen, people not taking an interest, but overtaking an interest. One of the first shots that we did when we were shooting pre-scheduled material, we shot the children riding their bikes. It was such a great shot, and we were going to use it in the trailer. We didn't really have a place for it in the narrative, and then finally we said, oh, there's this nice moment before we go to Margot and Nick where we could use this, and so we sort of shoehorned it in there, and it's one of my favorite little, again, it feels like small town middle America. I loved Missy Pyle. We'd read a lot of people, and it was only a day and a half, 2 days of shooting. We had to shoot all the sort of bumper footage for her show and, her whipping off her glasses and chewing on pencils and looking like an investigator. And we had all that stuff that had to be part of the graphics package of the Ellen Abbott show. But for the most part, all of the things that you see her on her show, all that stuff was pretty much done in one day. And it was done the last day of shooting. And so Missy, who we cast probably before we started shooting, it was a good 104 days later that we finally got her into a little videotape studio on Flankersham Boulevard. And Ellen Abbott is a creation. She's not meant to be based on anyone in real life in particular, but she certainly has aspects of her that are Nancy Grace-ish. I had always kind of thought if it's based even broadly on Nancy Grace, if we just go a little broader, if we go a little more exaggerated, it'll be fine. And what we found on our one day of shooting was you can't go too far. It's like, in a weird way, you kind of have to come back from it. You don't even register it as hyperbolized. So the weird thing was to take it more seriously and not try to make it funny. So this is the first half of our second day on the back lot at Universal, and we needed Brooklyn. And so we dressed the bookstore on the corner and put some graffiti up and brought in a Mayflower truck and shot this quick drive away, which ended up taking probably about 25 takes to get, because we had to get the camera mounted onto the car so that it could see the family waving in the background and then pan over and get their little look to one another. And getting it that concise, getting it to be that sort of effortless took a long time. I love the double-edged sword of this part of the story, which is we're beginning to see her enforced isolation from the rest of the people in the story. We're beginning to see that Amy is, she needs to be a victim, and we have to sort of feel empathy for her. There's a tiny bit of an edge to this, which says, well, why aren't you running over to see Mama Maureen? And why aren't you saying hi to Margot? And why are you staying away? So her behavior is kind of one thing. And then there's the voiceover, which tells you how alienated she felt to begin with before they even arrived. It's a really interesting dichotomy. And now we get to Andy. I like the idea of introducing Andy as this kind of werewolf that comes in the back door and just mauls him. It's like, and it's obviously it's not something he resists very much. When we were looking for somebody to play Andy, it was imperative from my standpoint that we find somebody who could divide the audience immediately, that you could literally take a broadsword and kind of cut right down the center of the theater and go, okay, women are going to lean back in their chairs, be disgusted, cross their arms and go, he is a fucking prick. And that men would put their chins on their hands, lean forward and say, yeah, but I mean, it's kind of understandable. And Emily Ratajkowski does that. She just has that ability. There's a part of you that says, I completely understand why he would make this mistake, but it is a horrible, horrible transgression and it should be punished. And you have to have that. We met Emily, I forget, I think it was Ben who said, yeah, like the girl in the Blurred Lines video. And I had no idea. I mean, I kind of live in an igloo in East LA, but I had no idea about the Blurred Lines video. And so I saw it and I thought, well, this girl is definitely divisive. And I was very worried that we were going to be meeting with a supermodel and that this was somebody who was kind of more interested in what the project was going to do for them than they were with what they were going to do for the project. And Emily came in and I just thought she was fucking great. She was absolutely no bullshit. She has no pretense. She takes direction amazingly. She really listens and she is willing to take risks and fail. And that's what you have to have as an actor. You have to know that it may not pan out, but it's okay. There's going to be another one. We're going to keep doing it until we happen onto something. But she was completely present, was amazing listener. And by the way, when she says Godspell, I just could not stop cracking up. They're supposed to be having sex standing up at one point in this montage, and it was Rosman in sweatpants and Ben with his Wrangler jeans down around his mid-thigh. And as he was walking away, I said, I want you to say, let's go to Outback tonight. And Rosman, I want you, no bullshit, to truly appreciate that as an evening out.
That'd be nice.
We had been spending so much time at the Outback behind the Drury Suites where the crew was staying in Cape Girardeau that as soon as he tried that take, everybody on the set just started laughing.
Eat it. Watch my dorky high school friend.
I love when Ben turns to Rosman and he puts his hand on the newel post and you really get this idea of like, I know that if I just tolerate whatever is coming next long enough, if I look like I'm attentive, I'll be able to leave and I'll be able to go out with my girlfriend. So yeah, honey, of course I'm listening to you and you have my undivided attention. I really liked the way this turned out. It seemed like a really good escalation of unspoken frustrations that people have with one another. And obviously it gets to a highly exaggerated and hyperbolic place. But I really felt like they got to something that for the audience feels like it's a reasonable explosion. It's not a reasonable response, but it's a reasonable explosion. And you can get to this thing of, yes, those moments are really, really, really frustrating when she has been biting her tongue and unhappy with the idea that she's being left alone night after night after night. And he is frustrated because he's late and has, for whatever it is that he's up to, he's now not on time. It seemed real. The last shot of Rosman in the sequence really looks like a Hitchcock film to me. That really feels like Grace Kelly or something, the angle and the smudge of tears and snot. This was an idea that was in the book, and it was something that I felt was really important to the texture of this small town in middle America. And I love the idea of the mall gone bust. And we didn't find a mall that we could shoot in Missouri, but we found there was a mall in South Central LA that has got to be 1 million square feet. And the pictures of this grand escalator that has been completely picked like a carcass. And I love this location, even though there's no way that there's a mall this this size in North Carthage anywhere. There was originally going to be this chase sequence. There was going to be a girl or woman that we see in pink at the end as they're exiting, and they were going to find her, and she was going to be, obviously not anything like Amy and possibly a crackhead or somebody who'd been, homeless and living in and we just ran out of time in the scene. But the scene, I think, plays. And I love the suspicion that it clouds the next part of the narrative with. And it was never intended to cut directly from she wants to buy a gun to now I think I want to buy a gun. But we rearranged a lot of scenes in this section. And it seemed to work where you would ask yourself, well, this is becoming very unseemly. And then you would get to Amy's response and inclusion of the unseemliness into her marriage story.
That is how crazy I've become. Nick wants me gone, but he won't ask for a divorce. In his mind, I'm the owner of his bar, his only line of credit, the bitch with the prenup. I could go home to my parents, but I'd have to tell them the truth. And I don't even know if I believe the truth. Can I really think Nick would hurt me? I'm being paranoid. Crazy. It's just, I'd sleep better with a gun.
This was a fantastic moment on set because I really wanted the reality of you have to get up silently, get your clothes on, get your teenage girlfriend out of your sister's house because you've overslept. And in the rehearsing of this notion of, okay, you've got to get her dressed because she's still groggier than you are, and you have to be the responsible adult here. And it started to look so perverse. The notion of this 6'5" man dressing this tiny, voluptuous mistress. It almost looked like he was getting her ready for a school bus. It was so Lolita-esque. I wanted Ben to shut that back door as quietly as he possibly could. We ended up having to loop the whole scene to get it quiet enough because it needed to be whispers that were barely audible to the audience, so that you really think that he's gotten away with it, only to have Carrie Coon just shatter the silence. And when we shot the scene, I don't think there's one bad take of Carrie's line, "You fucking idiot." She just let him have it each time. The gag was an idea that she kind of did it halfway on one, and I don't know whether she intended it to be a gag or whether she intended it to be like she was just so exasperated with him. But the actual gag reflex I thought was truly funny. And, when it's delivered by a master, it's like undeniable. And this is a really pivotal scene because you're not only seeing a cad and a heel, but you're also seeing a guy who's trapped in a horror story of his own creation. And I think that Ben is able to not only sort of offer up the vitriol that he's able to deliver what was really going on in his marriage and how he really felt about it. At the same time, you see that he's extremely uncomfortable with the stupidity. You see a guy who is wrestling with, I guess I deserve to be in this situation, and yet I literally don't know what to do. I literally don't know where this is going. I based a lot of the relationship between Carrie and Ben on the relationship that I have with my younger sister, and it's both loving and contentious, and she would be the first person to go, "You fucking idiot." And that to have somebody who can say that to you and you kind of go, "Yeah, I guess you're right," was really, really important to the dynamic between these two. And the fact that Margot was the one person who can say to Nick, "Well, whoever took her is bound to bring her back." I thought that was such a great an understanding that they have that goes beyond anything they could possibly explain to you. There was an interesting criticism about, well, why is Ellen Abbott always on the TV when they turn it on? Well, there's 6 frames of the DVR interface at the beginning of this, which shows that she's actually recording these episodes and has them available to look at because she doesn't know when her brother's going to walk in, and she doesn't want to have to be watching it live.
Buddy?
Can't believe we haven't arrested this guy.
We're not gonna arrest anybody just because some blonde dunce says so.
Why are you going so easy on him? You got a crush?
1, I am conducting an investigation, not a witch hunt. And 2, don't talk to me that way ever.
She was trying to buy a gun.
We don't know who or what was scaring her, Gil. Give me the update.
It's an interesting comment on society when characters in movies don't have to explain what luminol is. It's a sign of the times.
So luminol lit up the kitchen like 4th of July.
For those of you who don't know what luminol is, it's a compound that adheres to
Thoughts on a weapon?
iron in your blood, so that even if you've washed blood away with soap and water, it can adhere to the molecules of iron in the blood stain that would be there and make it fluoresce.
My wife says he's a killer.
Well, if Tiffany says.
This was shot near the city hall in Cape Girardeau, and they have this beautiful gazebo and this wide open area. And we were there for 2 nights with 250 extras, or maybe a little bit more. And not one of these people, when we would break and say, okay, we're going to move on to the next setup, when you do that in Los Angeles, the professional extras, they just scatter like cockroaches. They go looking for a place to get on their cell phones or get on their iPads, and getting them back, herding them back is truly a Herculean feat. When we were in Cape Girardeau, these are locals, and we told them up front, here's what it is we need from you, and here's what you're going to be expected to do. And they stood there for 12 hours, pretty much on their marks. And when we would say, okay, guys, we're going to take 5 minutes, we're going to be moving a camera over to here, you are free to go, they were like, no, we're happy to just watch. And having 250 people in a scene is usually a really, really difficult thing, because the crowd itself is so hard to manage. But if you have big crowd scenes, go to Cape Girardeau, Missouri.
Have nothing to hide. Amy is my
This
soul.
cutaway to Emily Ratajkowski I love, because I love the fact that she's dead center in the middle of the wide shot and you never see her. And then you cut into the 65 millimeter shot and you go, oh my God, she stands out like a sore thumb. And then you go into the 100 millimeter close up of her face and she gives her, you asshole. And the fact that it's barely audible is the only thing that makes it believable. But it does feel like he hears it across the entire lawn. And here comes Casey, just when things were getting serious and not a lot of fun. Casey Wilson comes in to change all of that. It was funny because we never discussed the notion that Andy would be shocked or that she would cover her face. But I remember saying to Emily, okay, so then she says she's pregnant and I need you to respond to that. And she came up with that. I think that was like take 2, and that's the one that's in the movie. One of the most important aspects of sound design is to make sure that you're building toward a greater understanding of the environment, because for the most part, sound design is about the environment. And one of the things that Ren Kleiss is so great at is the character of different environments. And so he had this idea to have a baby cry right as somebody says, what did you do to your pregnant wife? And there's this awkward pause, and then a baby begins to weep. And I love the idea of every creature that's pro-life in this moment is being asked to weigh in on the tragedy of this lost woman. Another aspect of that is the character of the mob. The first time that Nick's at a press conference, they're very polite. I mean, they're insistent, but they're very polite to him. And at the moment in time that we realize that his wife who's disappeared may or may not have been pregnant, all of a sudden they become extremely hostile. The switch has been flipped. And they're now 180 degrees. It's a lynch mob.
Scene of the crime.
We spent the whole day shooting this one scene, except for the inserts of the photographs. And it's one of those scenes that sort of blocks itself. As soon as the actors came in and, we knew that we wanted to have Kim walk over across here. We knew that the special effects guys had rigged the mantelpiece for the pictures to fall. And we had all that stuff sort of kind of worked out. But it's one of those scenes that sort of comes together on its own, because it's very obvious from the drama what it is that has to happen. But it was really effective, and it's oddly effective because it's really well written. And it's the thing of, if you're following the right kind of emotional map, the actual specifics of it become really apparent. And this is one of those, I knew that we were going to be there all day shooting this, but there was something about it that, like, for every change of setup, you could tell that, the actors would get drained, but then we would come back and they would be just as good as they were before because they liked the motion through the obstacles of the scene. They got it. It made sense to them.
I don't even go.
I do. You
I love the idea of Nick Dunn finally sort of pointing out to the police, wait a minute, this is a felony. We have to do something about this. And it's like, dude, what do you think murder is? Are you confused about what the circumstances are here, what the consequences are of your actions? Singani 63 is a alcoholic beverage that's imported by Steven Soderbergh, and I gave him a choice as to what scene he wanted his Singani to appear in. He chose a later scene where Rosamund Pike violates herself with a bottle. When she was offered either an exquisite French Chardonnay or the Singani, she chose the Chardonnay for actor reasons. I love this cat. This cat's name is Cheeto because he looks like a Cheeto. And Cheeto was not very healthy. I think Cheeto was a little dehydrated. His fur was a little greasy and kind of matted. And he didn't seem to hear very much. I don't know that he saw very much. But the beauty of Cheeto is wherever you place Cheeto, that's where he was going to stay for that day. So continuity with Cheeto was never an issue. If you put Cheeto on the stairs, you could shoot for 9 hours, and at the end of the day, go, Cheeto's at the bottom of the stairs. You can just go pick him up. He was fantastic.
Suddenly you've got a pregnant wife. That's a problem.
I love this argument between the two of them because they really do seem like they know each other. And the fact that the things that are upsetting to her seem like the kinds of things that, if somebody's truly invested in you in a way more important than anything, she resents the fact that she's behind the 8 ball as to what's really going on. And you see that rift. She's trying to tell him, you have to be aware of how this looks, and it looks terrible. As somebody who desperately cares about you, it looks terrible. And the fact that she has to keep explaining it to him is what makes her more and more angry. And it's like somebody who's getting to the point of saying, well, God damn it, don't you see how much I fucking love you? And Carrie does that so well. It's so caustic and at the same time caring. And that's a really interesting mixture. And in the wrong hands, it could either be too earnest and emotional. And I really like the way that you see most of it through her eyes and her behavior. And we get to a very odd idea at the end of this, which is, I would never ask you that question. And of course, that's the only question she really wants to ask.
Do anything for her. It just kept hanging over my head. It was disgusting.
Your prenup? Nick, why have you kept this stuff? It's like a little box of hate.
I don't know. Go. Maybe I hate her.
I love you no matter what. But you need to tell me.
Tell you what? What are you asking me? Are you asking me if I killed my wife? Go? Is that what you're asking me? If I murdered my wife?
I would never ask you.
And there's Cheeto at the bottom of the stairs after 14 hours of shooting. Whenever we cut outside and we see the locusts, the media locusts around the Dunn house, we always try to include somebody in the distance laughing about something, like either they're on their phone. But the notion that it's a very serious, high-stakes issue for the guy in the house, but outside the house, it's just another day at the office. This is a musical cue that was just, it has a sort of ground acquisition pace to it. It has that feels like clues coming together. It has this kind of, but we could never find a place for it earlier on because it has this strange, eerie momentum to it. And it was funny when this scene started coming together, when we started really fine cutting the scene, all of a sudden it started to work perfectly in the reveal, in the moment that had to reveal what is going on.
Picture me. I'm a girl who's very, very bad.
The flares are, we shot the entire movie spherically with Leica Summilux lenses, so there were no anamorphic lens flares. We added those later just to be irritating. Just to fuck with people. We went with Leica lenses because they were really beautiful. They're as flat and sort of perfect as the master primes, but we didn't have anywhere near as many back focus issues. I've had a lot of issues with master primes and red cameras, and I don't know why that is, but we had one lens of this Summilux set that had some issues. It was a 40 millimeter that we sent back a couple times, but for the most part, it was a great set, and they're beautiful. And this sequence, really, the footage of Amy in her sweater leaving the bedroom and locking herself in the guest room, that was from an earlier sequence where Ben returns home and is brushing his teeth and she's questioning whether or not she feels safe. And then we had that sequence of shots where she walks into the guest bedroom and locks the door. And we moved it because once we had moved the gun sequence, I wanted to buy a gun. I went to the mall and tried to buy a gun. Once we'd moved that sequence, we'd moved things out of their intended sequence so much, we ended up cleaving that section off the back of it. And then we had it to use, and it felt really right in the kind of maelstrom of information that's leading up to the reveal that Amy is indeed alive.
This man of mine may kill me. He may truly kill me.
WTF.
So when I was reading the book, I got to the point of the twist, and I'm reading it, and I suddenly become aware there's an inevitability to this reveal. There's an inevitability to the idea that this movie is nowhere near as simple as just the pregnant wife victim. And this speech, the cool girl speech, which is going to be sort of tacked on to bringing the audience up to speed on, this is what you've really been watching. It's a very tricky moment. One of the things that Gillian and I talked a lot about was initially, this movie talks about some ugly things, but it has to talk about ugly things in a way that's amusing. And we talked about Lolita. This was a movie in 1962 that's about a pedophile, and yet the movie's not about pedophilia, and it's not a cautionary tale of taking sophisticates into your home and putting them in charge of your daughter. It's a movie that has to talk about extremely disturbing things, and at a time when you weren't allowed to even say some of the words that the book uses to talk about its subject matter. So they figured out a way to kind of get beyond people's reticence to even engage. And one of the ways that they did it was through humor. And one of the ways that they did it was, certainly when we were talking about Desi Collins, we talked a lot about Claire Quilty and how this is a character who doesn't necessarily have to exist in the real world. He can be a figment of our imagination. And this was a moment where we talked about, we talked about Vertigo. And for me, the incredible dissatisfaction in Vertigo, that is the letter that gets written that explains to Scotty everything that's happened. And I felt very much that if we didn't have a sequence that had a kind of density of information and that didn't really show you in incredibly uncompromising terms what went down, it needed to be a sequence as smart as its villain. And I think that Gillian wrote that. And I think that the density of the information and the thought process behind these ideas really kind of draw you to this character in a way. At the same time that she is, morally repugnant, she's also fascinating. And I think that that's her saving grace. She's really fucking interesting.
Stage your crime scene with just enough mistakes to raise the specter of doubt. You need to bleed. A lot. A lot. A head wound kind of bleed. A crime scene kind of bleed. You need to clean, poorly, like he would. Clean and bleed and clean. And leave a little something behind. A fire in July. And because you're you don't stop there. You need a diary. Minimum 300 entries on the Nick and Amy story. Start with the fairy tale early days. Those are true, and they're crucial. You want Nick and Amy to be likable. After that, you invent.
One of the things that took a long time to put together, as far as I was concerned, one of the things that kept me from saying yes to this movie for a number of months was my insistence with Jim Giannopoulos, the head of Fox, that we can't use any footage from Fade Out where we reveal what's happened with Amy. We can't use any of that footage in the trailer. We have to limit ourselves to showing Amy only in the flashbacks, because I don't want to see her Ozarks Amy. I don't want to see her. The one shot that I did allow was the underwater shot, because I felt I like the idea of it setting the stage for did or did he not kill his wife, not what happened to his wife, but did he or did he not kill her. And I felt like that footage helped us make that mystery pointed. But it was a really, really interesting, tough marketing constraint, because, as much as everybody agrees in theory, yes, we don't want to give away the twist, when push comes to shove and the movie's not tracking and people are worried about whether anyone's going to show up on Friday night, the first thing that happens is people go, well, we have this great joke that happens later. She does come back covered in blood. That would be great. And it took about 3 months and a lot of conversations with Jim and with Emma Watts at Fox to say, you're going to have to agree to this. You're going to have to back the play, that if you don't bury the lead, and if you market this movie as here's a stupid guy and his crazy wife, there's no reason to make the movie. You have to give people that enjoyment, at least, of finding that out. And eventually everybody agreed, but it made it really hard to get people into the theaters to watch the movie, because we were very limited. From a teaser to a trailer to television spots, we were limited to the first kind of 54 minutes worth of footage. We couldn't use anything else. But I did feel in my heart of hearts that if we go a little bit beyond, is this the Scott Peterson story? You could go a tiny bit beyond that, but that really the major takeaway as related to the marketing had to be, did Ben Affleck kill his wife? It was very important to me and to Rosamund that we're not asking, there are characters that she's going to meet, Jeff and Greta, who are already staying at these cabins in this recreational center and the Ozarks, and they need to be in the same room watching footage or photographs of Rosamund Pike on television, and they can't be able to recognize her. And I really hate it in movies where somebody puts on glasses and people can't recognize, they're unable to recognize Clark Kent. People can't make that connection. So one of the things that we had to do, or that we felt we needed to do, and it had been described really beautifully in the book, is that she gains weight. She wears Spanx. She's not a size 2. She moves up to a size 8, and her husband doesn't notice it, and it allows her to dye her hair this sort of mousy color and get a sunburn and buy very weak reading glasses. And Greta especially doesn't recognize her. And I think that we were 80% successful in creating a version of Amy that is, that she would have been able to get away with this. That was extremely important to me, and I felt that Rosamund did an enormous amount of hard work, gaining 12 to 15 pounds and then losing 12 to 15 pounds in 15 days, 20 days. It's not easy. It's not safe. I mean, we had doctors that worked with us and trainers that worked with her to map this out, but it's not something you want to do. Just ask Robert De Niro. So we're describing a relationship between a brother and sister, and they're very, very close. So close, and they're so respectful of one another that they've never really talked about his wife. in the way that they probably should have or would have wanted to. I mean, I think that the reality of the relationship between Go and Nick is very wisely and correctly described in that these are things she would never have let him in on. The fact that she always thought his wife was a crazy bitch was something that comes out of this ridiculous situation, this completely absurd. I maintain that the movie begins as a mystery and then sort of hands off the baton to a absurdist thriller. In a mystery, you don't know how many plates are in the air. In a thriller, you know how many plates are in the air and you know which ones can't hit the ground. So the movie has to make this transition between what happened to Amy to how is this going to resolve itself? How can this possibly resolve itself when she is, kind of a criminal mastermind and as vengeful as anybody you will ever meet? Are the people who are left to pick up the pieces going to be smart enough, and will they be cut enough slack in terms of public opinion to be able to piece together, a life going forward? And I think that that's, for my money, I'd never seen that before. And I really felt like Gillian she described a movie that I would want to see and that I hadn't. And I thought I love the idea of the Post-it notes. I love the idea that it's not only something that Boney does, where she shows up and she says, oh, this is interesting, remind me to come back to this later. But it's also something that Amy uses. It shows her attachment to the criminal unfolding or unwrapping or criminal origami. And I love the idea of going through a calendar that says, oh, and by this date, should you have killed yourself by September, I think you will have to, one will have to commit to killing oneself in one way or another.
You don't own a python and blast death metal at 4 a.m.
This is one of the first things that we shot. Well, it's probably day 2 or day 3 in Giant City, Illinois, where we shot the Ozark sequence. And it was actually this very, very beautiful recreation, this sort of village of cabins in this great recreation center. And they allowed the crew to stay there and they allowed us to shoot there. And it was probably more like the Ralph Lauren version of what was described in the book. It was really not the white trash hub for motocross and boating. It was extremely elegant, and we shot there for a couple of days. And it was the beginning of the shoot. It was literally the first couple of days that we were shooting. And it was really awkward to ask Rosamund to start with the lie version, one facet of Amy that has nothing to do with who Amy really is. She's playing a person, playing another person, and she's playing a person, playing somebody that she hasn't really thought, the real Amy hasn't really thought Ozark Amy through to the greatest extent, because she's eventually going to be sort of found out. So she can't have done such a good job that we're surprised that Greta and Jeff figure out that she's on the run. And this is the fabulous Lola Kirk. Lola Kirk came to us, did an audition, could not be further from this person that she's playing. She is not she's not a street smart kid. She's sort of wonderfully, really smart, really, really funny, really worldly, very astute.
Nebraska.
So Boyd Holbrook plays Jeff, and Boyd he was a model. I'd seen him in, the first time that I'd seen him, he was playing one of Liberace's lovers in Steven Soderbergh's Behind the Candelabra, and he is nothing like this, but he came in and blew our minds with his bizarre, he's like a lovable hick, he's so fabulous to watch. They're a great couple. They have this great kind of energy, and I love the way that at the beginning when we introduce Boyd, we see that Lola could not be less interested in him. And then of course the next time we see him, they're like, riding go-karts together, playing miniature golf, and it's just like you watch this relationship happen, certainly against whatever it is she set out thinking she was going to do with Jeff.
I went to the ball where he works.
This is a really important flashback to me. You needed to see Amy heartbroken, and you needed to see why she went to the I mean, this is not to condone her behavior in any way, but it's to explain, her her break with reality. And as it's described in the book, it's one of these things that has to be this beautiful romantic moment that somebody steals from their earlier pickup line and uses to consummate this other relationship that kind of pushes her over the edge. And so I wanted it to be hyperbolically, serenely, perfectly executed. And so we actually, in the creation of the snow, everything's falling perfectly straight down. Nothing is swirling. Nothing is moving side to side. All the snow that's added later is it's almost like ribbons of pearls. The tramp stamp was Lola Kirk's idea. I'm not lukewarm on it now. At the time, I was. So the idea of your life being suddenly grown 60 minutes, or an aspect of a question mark about your life, is now food for network news. I thought that Gillian came up with a really fun way of doing that, which is he walks by Sharon Schieber on a big plasma screen TV in the airport. We did one day of second unit stuff in New York City, and then we shot this sequence in Los Angeles. And here comes Tyler Perry. And Tyler Perry watches people in the scene unlike many actors. He is extremely present. It was one of those casting choices where you have an instinct. And I just called him up and said, listen, I'd love to send you the script, and you'd be doing me a great favor if you would read it and tell me what you think. And he was kind of like, are you sure you want, he's very, very humble man. And it was exactly that quality that I think, in the book, he's much more of a Alec Baldwin from Malice. He's much more of a smooth, articulate, insensitive blowhard. And I loved what Tyler naturally brought to this, which is he's a talk show host. He listens and he puts you at ease. And I love the fact that Tanner Bolt became somebody who, when he says, here's what you're going to do tomorrow. You're going to go on Diane Sawyer, who's going to fly all the way out here. And yeah, she's going to expect a revelation. And the revelation that you're going to give her is that you've been banging your 20-year-old student. And this is the best way to get out in front of this. If that information is delivered by somebody who's a bit of a huckster or too slick, I know that it would move the audience to understand why he does what he does. So the fact that it was Tyler Perry saved us from a lot. You have to prove that Nick's gone to the right guy. And I love the idea of, he says somebody's name and Tanner types it into his BlackBerry, and 5 seconds later it's like, here's the guy's home address, and you just go, wow, that was good. It was so much fun shooting this scene because you finally got to kind of see this other aspect to this story, which was things are getting absurd, and somebody has to appreciate it for that. Scoot McNairy. So Scoot McNairy was a last-minute addition. I love the idea of a character who describes himself like, do I look like I would do good on the yard? I love the idea of somebody saying, can you imagine me in prison? And that was basically all we were looking for, is an actor who could wear that line, and you would go, no, I guess I understand. You would definitely plead guilty in order to avoid that. And there's something so funny about, he's very smart, and he has a way of turning sort of desperation into, it's very understandable. And we were lucky enough to be able to find a moment in time where he was not shooting his television show, and he came in and we did one day. We scrambled like mad to do this in one day, but it was so worth it to have him as part of the menagerie of great performers. One of my favorite moments in movie history is in Manhattan, where Diane Keaton has been talking about this ex-lover of hers who was somebody who really opened her sexually to the radical ideas of intimacy. And the entire time Woody Allen is kind of freaked out about this, with somebody who's a professor of hers. And finally he meets Wally Shawn, and Wally Shawn plays the devastating ex-lover. And I love the idea of, you're going to meet the person who may or may not have raped Amy, and then you meet Scoot, and Scoot's like, me? Do I look like a rapist? Like, I needed somebody that you would look at and go, he's a lot of things, but a rapist he is not. He makes half of his case just by showing up in the scene.
And raped her. Me. And then guess what they find? Headboards in my bed, one on each side.
The ties you wouldn't wear.
You do know your wife.
Did you ever see her again?
Yeah, on TV last week with you. I thought, there's Amy. She's graduated from being raped to...
I love the idea of putting Noelle Hawthorne on Alan Abbott, and I love the idea of giving her all of these things to talk about that, of course, are of interest to her. You know, she's sort of launching her program at the same time that Alan Abbott. There's a lot of co-opting going on in this sequence, and they happen right next to each other in these sort of mortised panels. We started the whole sequence where we see Casey, and it was really important to me that we have a truck drive by in the background, so you really get the idea that it's like it is truly a remote unit, and they're going 3, 2, 1, get the truck out of here. And then she begins talking, and you have the whole earwig thing where they're not quite hearing each other at exactly the right time. You have Ellen Abbott, who is, you know, behaving in a way that is, oh, thank you so much for being a friend of the show, friend of the program, and a friend of Amy's. And of course, the hilarity of it for me is that Lola Kirk, Greta, is the most cynical about it. She's the one who's looking at this going, oh, look at these people. This is, just once I'd like to hear somebody say, she was a real rag.
We never met Nick. He never introduced himself.
Well, why was that, Noelle? Why do you think?
Well, I think we know why. Because he had a violent temper. And
A little harsh.
Well, that's life, baby.
And he knew I'd have seen right through him.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's okay you killed her. I'm just saying there are consequences.
On how to be a longtime supporter. She was so alone. And she was so innocent.
You're a good friend, Noelle. And you're a good friend of the show. Thanks for coming on.
Please tell me you landed Tanner Bolt.
Tanner Bolt landed me. I'm gonna try and see Desi Collings on my way home. And go, Tanner's retainer is $100,000. That's just a retainer.
Listen, I've got $47,000 in savings. I've got $2,500 in an IRA. I'm looking for a second mortgage on the house. We will go from there.
Thank you.
Southwest is
I love you.
I love you too.
Nick keeps his father, who has Alzheimer's, in a facility. Number of times he visited last year, 1.
Oh, fuck!
His twin sister, Margot, well, she is a peach. These two spend their days in the bar Amy bought them. Playing what, Lauren? Playing house? You know, twin siblings often enable and abet. While I never examined Nick or his sister...
There's a moment described at the end of this scene where Nick Dunn has to reach into his duffel bag or his backpack and get out a baseball cap that he's bought at the airport. And he puts it on and walks away in hopes that people don't recognize him from the television and put together that that's him, that he's in their presence. And I really want it to be Yankees cap. But being from Boston and not being very professional as an actor, Ben refused to wear a Yankees cap. And it did not come to blows, but we had to shut down production for 4 days as we negotiated with Patrick Weitzel over what would be the best thing for the movie, what Patrick thought would be the best way to meet the requirements of the production and something that his client could live with, which I thought was entirely unprofessional.
I'd like to report some strange activity near the woodshed.
I love this cue. I love whenever called upon, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross can find a sound for insanity. We shot this in Los Angeles. We were looking for a house that really screamed old money. This was a fun scene to shoot because it was the first time we ever spent real screen time on Desi. And this is the first time he kind of comes out of his cave and you see him. And we have to really desperately believe that he's somebody who could have done harm to Amy and could be working against the investigation and finding. And yet I wanted him to be able to play completely straight, that he never liked Nick, never trusted Nick, never wanted to be, this was not a relationship that he ever condoned. And you can kind of see all of those things working in this scene. It's a tribute to good actors when subtext, that was originally part of a whole big setup can kind of just be played in the foreground, in the moment, in the present.
There might be another side to this story. Mr. Collins.
The missing persons case of Amy Elliott Dunn. She's the beautiful blonde.
And I love this idea. This is definitely a scene that we probably could have cut, but the notion that the bar that he runs is overflowing with looky-loos who want to get their selfies in front of the bar where that guy may have killed that woman. This was a fun scene. This is one of those scenes that, it's a thankless job when, it's just a little bit more color. But I love the fact that we gave time to Boney to be able to say, I don't know. I love the way she phrases. I've never found that to be true. And I love the way she tosses it.
They just feel sneaky. Like finding an envelope marked clue.
You ever hear the expression, simplest answer is often the correct one?
Actually, I've never found that to be true.
Good night.
Night.
On the day we were shooting all the flyers, I just got sick of shooting flyers. It started to feel to me like the riot sequence from Gangs of New York was like flyers on bulletin boards and flyers on, and there was one of them got trampled and was right next to a bunch of cigarette butts. And I thought, no, by day 5 or day 6 of this whole thing, people would be fed up with Amy Dunn. There would be a couple of flyers that have been wedged into the gutters, and we should see those. This is again a fun scene I love the relationship between Margot and Nick, and I love the fact that she's doing things that he doesn't see. She's doing things that he wouldn't appreciate, and yet it tells you so much about how much she cares about him, even though she's had it up to here with him.
This leads us to what? My dad says.
Dad's house is blue.
Gillian came up with a very, very interesting idea, which is the house that the father, after the divorce, the father had this house, and he created this whole fantasy in his head of how his father justified that he never saw his kids anymore. And it's a very minimal idea, but it's very deftly done.
God's name is at your father's house, Nick. And be honest, I honestly have no idea.
This is a great line reading. There's just no two ways.
Whatever they found, I think it's safe to assume that it's very bad.
It's the thumb. The thumb is what makes it.
Nick, do you have any idea as to what Andy's mindset is?
Well, we haven't communicated since the vigil.
Okay.
This is a diner in Burbank that I had never shot at before and had never seen. And it's one of those things that as soon as you shoot at a place and you actually become aware of, the Naugahyde and the wood paneling and the yellow plastic textured glass, all of a sudden you see it in every single commercial. And you just want to shoot yourself in the head. It's like, oh, I really thought that worked for our movie, and apparently it works for almost everything. Gary Kuhn learned the hard way that the last thing you want to do in one of my movies is eat. She probably sucked down at least 5.5 pounds of French fries. This was fun, actually. This scene was, this was one of those nights where stupid shit was just happening. And it took a long time to figure out how we were going to film this scene. because we didn't want to do ass loads of coverage. It needed to be a concise, simple telling of the story. And yet it's a complex little interaction between these three. And then, of course, she has to hit a hole in one. And I actually, on 2 occasions, Rosman, one went in and bounced out, and the other one went in, she hit, I mean, again, it's probably a 40-foot putt or something, so it's not like hole 12 at Valhalla. But the first time she hit the ball and she hit it a little hard, it kind of went in and popped out, and everybody was, oh, and the second time she sunk the putt, but we didn't pull focus on it. We didn't catch it with the focus. So we ended up doing it in CG. But there's a lot of work that went into the scene making it this simple. All the head turns and where everybody's looking and how the ideas are being passed along that she's been found out.
It's mostly singles.
Singles? What are you, a stripper?
Swamp girls or treasure chest?
We're just teasing. Don't they tease people down in NOLA?
And I love this little scene. I love the idea that her television doesn't work, which is the only reason she's putting up with Greta. And I like the similarity between the coverage on this moment and this exact same mirrored thing was happening with Nick when Andy comes over to Margot's house. It's almost exactly the same pieces, except one is this paranoid criminal mind, and the other one is the paranoid, unfaithful husband. This was something when we shot in Cape Girardeau on about the 3rd or 4th day at this location, people started showing up with folding chairs across the street on the lawn. And, you know, the AD came up to me and said, you know, we will get them. Don't worry, by the time we start shooting, we will get all these people out of here. I was like, it's kind of perfect. It's kind of exactly what you want. What you want is that, you know, the sense of
You're doing Sharon Sheba tomorrow.
Gretna Green across the street from Nicole Brown Simpson's. This is a scene where you see exactly how great Tyler Perry is, because he understands this better than you. When he tells you this is about public perception, he does it in a way that says he knows what he's talking about. This is no longer about right and wrong. This is no longer about reality. This is about perceived reality. And I love his reading of a trained monkey that doesn't get lethal injection.
A trained monkey?
Trained monkey who doesn't get lethal injection. Nick, this case is about what people think of you. They need to like you. Now you do this and you will reach millions of those people.
Maybe I only need to reach one.
Hello? Hey, Daddy. 1 minute. Hey.
Hey, you clearing out?
No, I'm just cleaning up.
Well, let us come in and say goodbye.
I'll come by before.
Let us give you a hand.
This is an interesting scene because I think it was actually kind of hard for Lola to manhandle Rosman. And Rosman is, when it comes to stunts, she's not an actor. She doesn't act stunts. She's not going to fake a head snap. So we ended up shooting a lot of takes of Lola Kirk knocking her semi-unconscious, and it almost required her to be knocked semi-unconscious. But the take that's in the movie is spectacular in that it is, I mean, there's a rubber pad that's built into the walls that it's textured exactly like the walls around it, you know, so there's plaster on all the walls except for the one where Lola's going to smash Rosman's head. But she still had to do it so hard that I think Rosman saw stars. When she started screaming, her "ow" is really because she got whacked. And when Boyd picks her up and tosses her on the bed, he was, I mean, the first like 15 takes, he was so polite about it. And finally, you know, Rosman's like, just toss me, dude. And he threw her across that room. It was pretty spectacular.
Sorry, but we really need the money.
Next place, be more careful, okay? There are a lot of people out there a lot worse than we are.
This was something that she came up with on the day, was her scream into the pillow. And it was, I loved the idea of this kind of anger boiling underneath this very lovely and controlled exterior. We were shooting this on location in Cape Girardeau, and as we were filming the sequence, we were shooting the master shot. This car drove by, and it's summer, so it was pretty warm. We were wetting everything down, and the window rolled down, and somebody yelled out of the cars passing by, "Night, exterior, shitty motel." And then they drove off in the distance laughing. We were all sort of standing around going, okay.
Did not kill.
This is a fun scene. This was many takes, because I really wanted to get these gummy bears bouncing off of his forehead or getting caught in his hair, or this first one that lands in his collar. It's only happened once, but he had to have 2 cameras on it. And so it's that thing of you need enough little pieces that you can construct the version of it that really feels like, wow, he just pegged him every single time. It's a very funny scene. I really like the idea of, if you've ever been prepped for deposition, this is the amusing version of it.
Talk about your mom, how close you were. Go on.
For a while, things had been building up.
Built up implies that an explosion is coming. No.
At a certain point, we got on the wrong track. I had a moment of weakness.
Your moment was over 15 months.
Disrespected my wife. I disrespected my marriage. And I'll always regret it.
That works.
Don't be afraid to play up the doofus husband thing, Nick. I was an idiot. I'm a fuck up. Everything I do is wrong.
I know what men are supposed to do in general.
How do you feel?
I feel good. Go, can you pass me that box, please? It's Amy's 33rd birthday present to me.
You hate that watch.
I'll go. I love that watch. It's like I love this time. It's like I love my wife.
This is a matte painting. We shot this casino in Los Angeles down on Normandy at the freeway, and I remember asking the camera operator, and then tilt up at the end and tilt up, and he was like, why do we keep tilting up to see the sky? And I was like, I want to put a riverboat behind that. And he was like, okay. And when you put the riverboat in, it changes everything. So again, for his sins, here's Desi, drops everything to come and be the best possible ex-boyfriend you could imagine, and she is working him. This is the one scene that we shot where we didn't have control of the extras, because we were shooting in a working casino, and it worked perfectly. It was great. And I don't think we looped any of this. I think we used all the audio because it's such a manic and crazed background. It didn't matter as long as we got good tracks in the foreground. The great news about shooting in a casino is that if you don't have control over the background, the last thing you need to worry about is people looking in the lens, because they are all watching their money. And so they are extremely, their interest is elsewhere. They were very easy to control. We just kept giving them chips.
Is it wrong to want Nick to go to prison?
He should go to prison for what he's done. I'm setting you up at my lake house. It's utterly secluded.
Why are you so good to me?
Excuse me, you know why.
Excuse me. I know you, don't I?
No.
You're one of the Nolan girls, right?
No, we're from Winnipeg. Excuse us. You should leave.
Just a second.
So here comes Celia Ward, and Celia Ward is this amazingly attractive woman who is so smooth and so polished, and so she has that, she's a pageant queen, she's just got that, she has that ability to just walk into a room, turn every head, and begin speaking. And it serves Sharon Schieber so well.
Oh my God.
The character in the book's name is Andy Hardy, and I was the one that pointed out to Gillian, Andy Hardy is already a character in movies, and she was like, "Oh God, of course, that's where that came from." So, for months, because I don't know why, but I guess nobody in the internet wants to do any. No one wanted to go to IMDb or something, but it was Emily Ratajkowski to play Andy Hardy, and I was, well, this is going to be really interesting.
My prayers go out to everyone who loves Amy. I apologize for being
We have loved me.
This is Lisa Baines at her most Lisa Baines-like, and I adore her, and I find her so watchable when she is just this side of tears. It's always fun for the audience.
Well, it's just got very exciting.
We need a moment. We're gonna have to bow out of this.
Nothing's changed.
Everything has changed. An hour ago, we were ahead of
I think this is one of my favorite line readings ever. This is Carrie Coon right
different dynamic.
here.
She's going to eat you alive.
When she says, "She is going to eat you alive." It's that moment of somebody saying to you, "Look, you need to understand, you're not qualified to think for yourself right now." She did it. I mean, I think she probably did it. We did that 17 times. That reading of it just brought me to tears every time, because it was so, I care for you too much to let you go off and be the asshole that you're lining up to be right now.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
This is an awkward scene to shoot, because you have to shoot the videotape footage that you're going to see on the interview later. And so we shot everything with the red here, and then we shot all this footage with the 2 video cameras, and trying to get them to match. Oh my God. And I love this. I love the notion of like leading up to this big moment, and then you cut away from the big moment and people are talking about it, and then you got to wait to experience it with the character that it was all intended to be, it was all produced for. It's a very smart attention to chronology as it relates to storytelling.
Looking at a whole view. But until then, don't show your face.
No problem.
This was a house that was owned by a lovely family who was generous enough to let us shoot in. It was immaculate. It's one of the most beautiful homes I've ever been in, and it was it's just outside Cape Girardeau. We wanted Desi to be somebody, Desi has inherited a lot, and he is extremely wealthy, and yet there has to be an element of him that is homey and real. And so this house is both beautiful and elegant, and also has this incredibly woodsy comfort factor to it. And so when he's talking about the things that he finds beautiful, or the things that he finds comfortable or comforting about this, it's a great kind of match between, Neil, who is so smooth and so elegant and so at ease, and yet you also want him to be, didn't want him to be just this kind of weirdo in the woods. He also had to have something about him that was, truly decent. And the house really helped with that. A house sort of, had this just been this weird rustic cabin kind of thing, I think we would have, but the fact that it was so, it's so Frank Lloyd Wright.
I'm so exhausted.
I'll leave you to it then. Amy, I am so happy that you're here. And I don't want you to worry for one moment. There are cameras everywhere. The exterior, all along the grounds, the entryway. Anyone who is caught coming.
That's one of my favorite little flourishes there, when he turns on the television and you see all those closed circuit television angles of the house, and then he has it on his cell phone, and then when he closes the cell phone, it just lets you know, don't worry, I'll be watching everything, and you couldn't be more safe. And of course she's reading it as, I couldn't be more trapped. I could not imagine who Desi was. And I kept asking Gillian, who is this guy? Is he somebody in your family I could meet? Is he an uncle? Is he somebody that I want desperately to know what you base this on? And she kind of admitted that he doesn't want to be a contrivance. We don't want him to just be a literary conceit that moves the story and makes it possible for these things to happen. He has to kind of come from but there was, 60 pages of setup as to who Desi was in the book, and we didn't have that. We didn't have his mother. We didn't have. So I was just like, it's kind of one of those things where you've painted yourself into the corner in the narrative, and you now have to have somebody who does these things for your story. I think the best rule of thumb is find the most watchable actor you can possibly find. And I've joked about this before, but it really is true. Anybody who can make me watch the Tonys is you're probably in good hands.
You were never under my thumb.
On your leash?
Never.
I think this is a good example of why Rosamund had to gain the weight and lose the weight. She has plumpers in, she's wearing a little bit of a fat suit on her, but 12 pounds on somebody who's as lithe as Rosamund is shows up, but it shows up in areas maybe that you don't necessarily want it to. We had to make her feel like she was 10, 15, I would have liked her to be 20 pounds heavier, but you just can't burn that off and put it back on and burn it off again. So with 12 pounds and plumpers and a little bit of chub on her chub suits and wearing kind of, baggy clothes, we were able to make it so that, when she's here and she's eating custard over and over and over again and watching television, you kind of go, okay, she's moved in.
Great. Good evening. I'm Sharon Sheeber. Tonight, exclusively, a husband breaks his silence, not just on his wife's disappearance, but on his infidelity and all those shocking rumors.
And I love what Neil does here and he's just, he's basically an extra in this scene who does everything almost everything that's going on, everything that we're clocking on her has to do with how Neil is taking in her movements, the things that she's eating compulsively, when she's setting down her, what she's going to next. She starts to eat his custard. And then at the end, I love when she picks up the iPad that controls his whole home theater and she's licking her fingers. And you just get this look on his face like, please don't touch that.
I didn't come forward with my affair because I knew it would make me look really, really bad. But I don't care about that anymore. I just want to find my wife.
I'm just trying to get clear.
Let me be clear. Just because I'm not a murderer doesn't make me a good guy. I'm not a good guy. I was a bad husband to a great wife. I broke the vow that I made to her.
Those are pretty words, Nick. But what does that really mean to you?
It basically means that I was a con artist. I met Amy Elliott 7 years ago. I was completely transfixed. Amy can do that too. I was this average guy from an average place with mediocre aspirations. I met a woman who dazzled me, and I want her to love me. So I pretended to be better than I was.
There's a moment here where Neil picks up the bottle of wine and sort of loudly pours himself another glass because he's tired of the television getting all the attention. I love the idea that wine pouring could be distracting for her, and she actually gets sort of pissed off at him. We were, in trying to do the interview with Sharon Sheeber, it was really important to me that it feel real, that the manipulation of it, that he has to genuinely kind of win you over and win her over. And this is truly funny stuff. From my standpoint, I thought Ben had great wit in how he manipulated Amy.
You're the best person ever. And I've taken myself to the woodshed for the way that I've treated you. And if you come back, I promise.
And again, you always have the voice of reason in there, which is Carrie Coon looking, going, oh God, dude, this is just insufferable.
I love you. Come on.
I love when Neil takes the custard from her and starts to walk away, and then he sees her manhandling his iPad with licking her sticky fingers.
Regardless of what you thought about Nick Dunn's last night's scene, I think we can all agree.
Oh my God, you fucking killed it.
Not sure that we would get this kind of an instant response to Nick's performance, but it works for the story. And Sela is so wonderfully assuring in her reassessment of Nick Dunn.
This tragic case moves forward. I'm Sharon Shearer. Good night.
I love Kim Dickens. When she's serving a warrant, that warrant is served.
Property. I usually ignore tip line calls, but a neighbor was concerned about a strange man around your woodshed.
This is a sequence where we're shooting on location, the backyard of this house, and we had the shed there that was filled with all of the planted toys and expenditures that Amy leaves to incriminate Nick. And as we were shooting, the temperature was dropping. You know, this was supposed to be one of our last nights in Missouri. And it was about 40 degrees outside. You could see everybody's breath. And, you know, we were all in kind of jackets and sweaters. And then it started to drizzle, and then it started to rain. And so we ended up shooting just plates of the house with the cop car and the lights on. And we shot everybody green screen and put them back into the background plates, because we just literally ran out of time that we could be in Missouri. And it's one of those things that's like, it's not something I will actually avoid in the future. It seems like a really good way to save oneself.
It's the last thing you need.
There's a critical moment in this scene where Amy realizes that she's been preying on what she knows to be his desire for her. And she has this moment where she realizes when he says, "I'm not going to force myself on you," of course, what he means is, I just might force myself on you. I was trying to explain it to Rosman. I said, you have to include this word. You have to it's all about the notion of behaving. You know, there's something about being the supplicant to somebody else's domination. And when she said, "I've forgotten how to behave," and then he, of course, understands the subcontext or the sub-communication that's going on, and he sits down and he starts to play with her hair. And Neil Patrick Harris is so funny, because when he's playing with her hair, he's so looking past her, and at the same time she's watching him look past her, and she is enraged. And you realize that in this moment that he's not going to survive this story. This is one of the last things that we did in Missouri as well. We shot, this probably take 27, and I think we did like 3 takes within this. I would just send them back to the beginning and say, "Okay, guys, start again." I really wanted to see Tanner Bolt's frustration with the fact that Nick Dunn is just not getting it. This is not about reality. And there's a palpable and playful and ultimately exhaustion with it's not sinking in and it's not staying. He's not getting it. And I love how irascible Tyler is, and how I love seeing him at the end of his rope. He's very, very funny to me.
Is this your wife's handwriting?
It's not a handwriting. I think so.
I appreciate it there's a lot of talking, and there's a lot of stuff that has to get covered in this scene. And there's a lot of moves in this. And when you shoot a scene like this, you got to have people who are committed to the idea of getting all these ideas across and finding places for them, you know. At what point does Tanner Bolt, what point is he going to be shifty? At what point is he going to look and really take in what Boney's trying to cage Nick?
Never touched her.
She tried to buy a gun.
I doubt.
This was something that we came up with on the day, because they had this scene that we'd already shot in Missouri where he says, "The truth is my defense." And then in this scene where he volunteer, that does kind of look like my wife's handwriting, and Tyler becomes so upset with him. And then when Boney leaves,
Future reference. The truth. You're not a handwriting expert. Okay.
I asked Tyler, I said, just point out to him that, you know, by the way, you're not expected to incriminate yourself, so you're excused from being a handwriting expert. And I love the camaraderie between them, the the sort of palpable frustration between the two of them.
We found this day one. The fireplace in your home office, we didn't know what the hell it was, but fire in July, we bagged it.
Well, I've never seen that before either.
Just tested it. Fire doesn't erase blood, Nick. So finally, Nicholas Dunn, you're under arrest for the murder of your wife, Amy Elliott Dunn.
What about my son?
Nick!
So now the movie gets really weird. now Rock Hudson and Doris Day are in their Frank Lloyd Wright home in the trees around a lake somewhere in Missouri. And it was never expected that this be particularly realistic. It was, it's incredibly hyperbolic, and it's gonna get weirder. And what I love about this is how these guys took to, I mean, this is such a weird thing to say. Okay, you're in lingerie and you got to go to the office, and she's going to tell you a story about how much she hates her ex-husband and how you stand apart from him and people like him. And, you know, he does that little thing where she talks about Proust, and he does this little, what can I say? And it's incredibly funny to me. And I love that she, you know, she's trying to build a case through the video camera. She's trying to build a new diary, a new entry into her diary of victimization. And so she has to mess up his hair and untuck his shirt and get him to bleed. And she does this, and then where she offers up, that's how the kids are wearing it. And he has no idea what she's talking about, but she sends him on his way, and it's sort of naughty and sexy and promises something else in the future, the extent to which he does not truly understand. This was something that we came up with not on the day, but close to it. I said, you know, what if there's like beet juice lying around, and she literally like spills beet juice on herself so it looks like she's hemorrhaging. And Rosamund ran with it. And I think this is when people begin to truly fear Amy. Let's hope.
Done? You got one hell of a lawyer.
So in the escalation of the mob, in the fomenting of the unrest of the locusts, this is the peak of where we were headed to. And we didn't ask the extras to be particularly vociferous or horrible. We just added all that stuff in. But it was really, really important in the loop groups to get, you know, something goes from being, hey, can we take your picture, to, you know, was she pregnant? Wait, hey, stop. Where are you running to? To at this point, they're just about ready to flip this vehicle over and kill everybody inside.
It's guys on it. She's there.
Come home, baby. Get there.
I thought it was a great idea to show her torturing her wrists so that you really see how she can have these ligature marks and that they would be believable. And we know from the scene with Scoot that she knows what she's doing as it relates to ligature. And then we decided to take it a little bit further. So everybody bitches and moans about how many takes. People I've never even met complain about how many takes they shoot. The take of Neil Patrick Harris parking that Jaguar dead center in the middle of that frame, that was take two. That was take two. It's in the movie. We walked away after take two. So please, go fuck yourselves.
I've been thinking, I don't want to be without you.
This was designed to play in one because I really wanted to see the kind of palpable tension in the change from who Amy has been to the new voracious, sort of sexualized, there's always been the promise of Amy as his partner in lust. And now all of a sudden it had to be something that she has to get him going really fast. She wants to end it as quickly as possible. And so when we blocked this scene, we were talking about it for sort of maximum, it's not about two people enjoying each other. It's about one person getting their needs met while another person has to get half their needs met. And it was a particularly complex scene to shoot, not so much for the activity, but for the cleanup. And we shot for 2 days. We had 36 changes of wardrobe, 36 changes of bedding, 36 pillows, 36. The reason why is obviously that it's messy. And the idea of somebody being slaughtered like a lamb in the middle of coitus was, it was dirty work, but somebody had to do it. I loved her little shake of the head and not wanting to get blood on her nose. I love the fact that she's so prudent about getting too much blood on her or messing her hair. It's one of those little things that really makes her a memorable screen villain. The day that we shot this sequence, I think, was the day that the cast, well, at least the day that Ben and Rosamund finally realized that they were dealing with somebody who was a little unhinged. We blocked this whole scene. We brought in the crane. We had all the extras there. We, took about an hour and a half to get the continuity of the blood on Rosamund and that it could flake off and look like she had been bloody all night. And she showed up on the set and I said, okay. And then she comes forward and she falls into your arms. And then I want the poster for Gone with the Wind. I want her to fall. After you say, you fucking bitch, she falls away from you and gives the press the photo of their careers. It's literally, it has to be People magazine fodder for the next 15 years. And it was the moment where we had the crane set up and we were ready on the 21 millimeter lens to be in the over the shoulder, and she drops and we see everybody go crazy and then the camera shoots up into the air. And when I showed that to Ben and Rosamund, that's when they were like, what is this movie? What is going on? And it was a very enjoyable moment because I think that they finally sort of realized how unhinged the third act of this movie was going to be. It was definitely one of those moments where you thought, if I show you this footage, you will understand exactly what's going on in my head. And I brought them over and I showed them the thing and they looked at me like, okay. How does this fit in? I thought I was explaining myself so well.
Answer his letters. Keep him calm. Oh my God. Oh, I've encouraged him.
You can't blame yourself.
He pushed inside. And he grabbed me. But I got away and ran to the kitchen. And he clubbed me. I collapsed.
That club was actually the handle to a Punch and Judy puppet.
Right. Treasure hunt. I'd hidden some puppets at Ghost.
Then how did Desi have that handle?
I just found it. It must have fallen off. I was holding it when Desi pushed in, so he got it from me.
About that woodshed.
He took me to his lake house, tied me to his bed.
Back to the woodshed, real quick. When you went to place the puppets there, did you notice that it was packed?
Lots of stuff.
Corresponding to purchases made on credit cards in your husband's name.
Nick and credit cards he buys, I nag, I don't know, probably. He hid a lot of stuff, it goes, they're very close. Now, may I go back to where I was being held prisoner by a man with a history of mental problems?
Please continue, Miss Dunn.
Desi assaulted me that night. Every night.
One of my favorite little moments in the movie is when Rosamund starts to tell the story of her abuse at the hands of Desi to the FBI. And she gets to
shave me.
She gets to shaved me, and everybody in the room looks like it's the most uncomfortable thing that they've ever heard. And obviously the FBI has probably heard worse, but I love the idea of everyone's palpable discomfort at the idea of being shaved. It's so pornographic.
Can you just be happy your wife is home and safe?
And here's Patrick Fugit killing it with his little like reassessment of Ben Affleck, when he's like, you know, I never liked you, and this is the reason why I don't like you. Can't you just be happy when everything turns out okay and your wife comes back? And he's like, dude, you just don't get it.
Why did you try to buy a gun?
I'm sorry, I feel myself fading.
If I could just clarify one thing.
This case had been left in your deeply...
And this is another little moment that I love, when she looks over out the window and she says, I love him.
Miss Dunn.
And Ben, who has no idea what's being said in the room, looks and sees her looking at him, tries to be supportive or appear supportive, and he waves. And this wave is priceless. And that's when Boney realizes this is beyond her understanding.
Amy Dunn is home. Now, I know there are a lot of questions and concerns, but for right now, we want to sit tight and just be thankful and grateful for this miracle on the Mississippi.
When Tyler got ready to say Miracle on the Mississippi, I was tempted to push him toward Johnny Cochran there, but he was absolutely right. He came up with the perfect sort of like, you could definitely trademark it, but it doesn't look like we're pandering. This was a lot of fun shooting this sequence. When we mounted the cameras to the outside of the car and we drove up that street, and I saw the look on Rosamund's face and her eyes flitting from one adoring fan to the next. It was fantastic. It was like you just went, this is going to work. Well, the drive up to the house is going to work. And this is one of my favorite cuts. They go inside the house, which sort of looks like a doll's house, and he shuts the door, and he has nothing but contempt for the people that they've just fooled.
I'm not pretending. You were perfect. Nick, I saw...
And the moment where Rosamund has to think for a second before she says, take off your clothes. And then she's perfectly honest. I need to make sure you're not wearing a wire.
You need to tell me exactly what happened.
Take off your clothes. I need to make sure you're not wearing a wire.
It seems like the most reasonable request, and yet... So this is one of those things, it's kind of like the whole reason that this scene takes place in a shower is so that the character, Nick Dunn, can't be recorded saying any of these lines, and that none of the things that Amy will say to Nick Dunn could be recorded by any outside parties, which of course means the entire scene has to be looped, because indeed, being in the shower yields dialogue tracks that are wholly unsuitable. I feel like the looping on this is some of the best looping that I feel like the performances of it are as good or better than anything that they gave on the day.
I don't want anything to do with your groupies outside. Once they go, I go.
That's my favorite shot of Rosamund ever, when she says sleep on it. It's like you see she is strong, she is stunning, and she is nuts.
Was there ever a baby?
There can be.
This music, the dissonant background that's about to take over, this theme, this lush synthesizer theme that's about to go away with the backing up beeping of this truck, and then it's going to get into this sort of crescendo of just hum of anxiety. And it's one of my favorite cuts as we go from the locked door to the man with his cat, and you really get the idea. He really does not know where this is going. It's a subtle thing and it may be stupid, but I do like the idea that then the very next morning, she's co-opted his cat, Turncoat.
Hello, Ensign. Great.
And then this innocuous, cute, squeaky clean picture of prom goers is turned over to headline news. It's split down the middle like a Sherry Lansing poster and spattered with blood.
You must be so proud.
This is something that Ben came up with on the day. We had the newscaster in the background is a local newscaster in Cape Girardeau who was amazing, came out and did so many, to take after take. She's in like 15 different scenes. And on this day, she had to ask Ben the question, what's the plan, Nick? Where you? And Ben added this line in the walkover where he said, it's been 4 hours. And I thought it was so funny. And the focus puller never got back with the focus to the news anchor in the background. And so after everything, after her one line, it was like, the one that's in the movie is the one that we blew.
I'm stripped naked, stand in the shower.
I swear, you two are the most fucked up people I've ever known. And I specialize in fucked up. You and Amy under the same roof? Should pitch that as reality television. Amy Dunn.
Originally, there were 2 scenes. There was a scene that took place at the diner where Tannerbolt leaves, and then there was a scene at the bar where Boney lets everybody know that there's nothing more she can do. And so we decided to compress them into one scene and put it at the airport in St. Louis. And I like the scene. I like Tyler's line reading of, I specialized in fucked up people. It's funny's funny. Truth is funny.
Lifetime movie, you franchised the bar. You may want to thank her. Just don't piss her off. See you guys.
Elvis has left Missouri.
She had to have made a mistake.
When Kim Dickens says, we had the national spotlight on us and we stained the rug, it's...
We had a national spotlight on us. We stained the rug.
She's able to be so plain and so simple about it, and it reads as... It's sad, but it's also, it's the way things are. And I love the kind of pathos of that. And that's when you really got somebody who's skilled, because they can do it with no inflection and no spin, and they just got to come clean. And that's what makes her great. This is a scene on the day when we were shooting this, I could not stop laughing, because the idea of him being trapped in his own home by Mrs. Danvers.
Couldn't sleep.
Come on. Let me tuck you back in.
Watch Ben's hands here. He will not bring them down until he just can't get over the situation that he's in. He's forgotten how to behave normally. I don't know where this idea of the villainous chin came in, but we teased Ben mercilessly during the making of the movie that he said yes to this movie and then immediately got on the phone to his agent and said, okay, I'm doing a villainous chin role. You have to find me a heroic chin role. And that's how Batman came about.
Calculating, murderous, psychopath. And I've been complicit.
So there were a lot of people who took issue with the fact that there are these different stages of ending the movie. But I mean, if we had stopped the movie at the point in time that Amy comes back, or stopped the movie at the shower, or stopped the movie when he tucked her in and was sitting there petting his cat, I'm not so sure. I feel like I need the scene, the dressing room scene, which is coming up.
How many people are lucky enough to get a second chance at love?
Fantastic's a little flippant.
Amazing?
I need you to admit that you got the credit cards and that you hid all that stuff at goes and that you pushed me. I'm gonna need those 3 things to feel safe. You have to own this, Nick.
Don't worry. I know exactly what to say.
So this is the only time that you see Missy outside the box of a television, and she's priceless. I think that this moment where she steps in it with both feet, he's so reasonable in the way that he's presenting this to her, which is, why would I ever be nice to you after everything that you've done? And she's like, don't you get it? It's not about you. It's about perception. And then she goes to bring out the robot cat for his robot dog.
To go with your robot dog?
I'll go find Amy.
And I love the dryness of that.
She's downstairs.
This is a scene that we kind of Frankensteined from 2 or 3 other scenes that were written for this moment. And we were rehearsing on the day, and we kind of sent the crew out as we tried to figure out what the thesis scene was going to be. We needed a scene where he gets trapped, but that they also have a discussion about what all this is, what it all means. And so Ben grabbed Rosman. He goes, I would just say, I would call her a cunt. I don't know any other way. And I said, okay. And so you would do that. And everybody got, oh, no, you can't. You cannot use that word. You cannot use that word. And I said, well, what if Rosman takes the word back? What if she says, yeah, okay, fine. If that's what we're going to, that word has no power over me. Let me tell you what, if that's how little you think of me, that you would use that word, let me remind you that this is who I am. I'm that person, yes. But if you look at your life, you were never more alive and never better than when you were trying to be somebody that this person would like. And then it pushes him into this kind of honesty where he says, why do you want it? What is it about this that you even want? And he rattled that off. Ben, when he gets on a roll, he can get angry, and he went on this kind of roll about, we loved each other, but why? But look what's happened, and look where we are now, and look what it is. And Rosman just said, well, that's marriage. And I thought, maybe not that reading, but that's a pretty powerful idea, that's what it's all about. That it is about knowing your limitations and knowing the things that you're attracted to and knowing that they're unhealthy to you and knowing that they don't necessarily lead to the most. I just thought it was it was certainly illuminated for me what this relationship was about and why it was as poisonous and dramatic as it had become.
Not about what I want anymore.
You want to stay with her.
And I love that Carrie Coon is always going to be there for him. I think that Margot is she's the conscience of the movie. She's the conscience of the audience.
You're breaking my heart.
Go. You're my voice of reason. I need you with me on this.
Of course I'm with you. I was with you before we were even born.
We've been through the darkness. We come out united.
I love the moment in this interview where he is about to spill the beans and he says partners in crime, and then he just can't do it. And she owns him, you know, in that moment she owns him. And then it becomes this hug between girlfriends and he is done. What are you thinking? How are you feeling? What have we done to each other? What will we do?